everyone, thanks for tuning in to this month's Shutter Magazine article. I'm Dustin Lucas, and today I'm excited to talk to you about the top 5 tips when outsourcing your edits. So, whether the time is now or you feel like you're never gonna outsource your editing, there's no denying the fact that you cannot sustainably run your business without pulling all-nighters and just editing yourself. So you might have family members helping you out, friends, colleagues looking out to edit. Somebody is doing your editing for you so you can focus on shooting the business. You might just be focusing on the business and having other people shoot for you. But as you've learned about your business, you have to create systems. There are things that other people, other professionals are good at. They can do it more reasonably in terms of costs, and more importantly, allow you to focus on the more important things. So I understand some of you out there might love to edit, right? It's cathartic. It's such a good resolve to shooting your own pictures, editing your own images. You're the artist, you're the master. There's nothing more pure in the sense of being an artist, of doing all the production yourself, right? Let somebody else do the accounting, let somebody else do the printing, let somebody else do the selling. You just want to make work. You're the artist, right? So we all laugh at that because we're entrepreneurs, we're artists, we're working in the business, we're working on the business. I'm going to be talking about that a lot, right? Editing is working in the business. There's no reason that you should be spending all of your time, all of your mental energy, all of your sanity on working in the business all the time. You got to work on the business. Step out of the creative cave and focus on the money, focus on your clients. So, what I'm doing here is I Google searched wedding post production, right? So, I need help, I need editing. Where are those companies at, right? So as we all know, SEO is going to help out get your results to the top of the list. So your clients might be Google searching wedding photography near me, or portrait photography near me, newborn, boudoir, family, seniors. I mean, you name it, right? Many of you are like, yeah, I work with Facebook. I do Facebook ads. Somebody's not thinking I want photography. Let me go look. You need it to be in their face all the time. I get it. I'm not here to talk about marketing, SEO, all that stuff. Just Google searching. This is what you're likely going to do, or you're going to go on forums. You're going to go to some of your colleagues and ask, what do you do? Do you outsource your editing? Who you use? Word of mouth is huge for our industry. So I'm not going to go down the path of how you're finding someone. I just want you to be ready when you're looking to outsource. Top 5 ways to do that. So let's dig right into it, because I hope that you see your time is more valuable spent somewhere else on your business, maybe back with your family so you can be replenished to work back on the business, but certainly not editing, certainly not staying up all night, Netflix in the background, editing pictures. That's silly. So tip number 1, right? Don't expect perfection. If you expected perfection, it's probably you doing everything. You even get in your own way, but you know when it's all said and done, it's the way you want it to be, like it or not, it's perfect, right? It's perfect your way. Well, you got to stop. That's tip number 1. Don't expect perfection. If you're paying for perfection, you're probably taking your cost of goods for editing to 50% of what you're raking in. Well, what's the point? You might as well close the business down. Tip number 2, communicate, communicate, communicate. I'm going to be talking to you guys a lot about how to be a better studio, to be ready for the outsourcing process, to be a good partner, right? Your team, your editing team is going to be your partner, right? It's a relationship. Relationships are hard to have, but communication is key in any relationship. Tip number 3, build a solid workflow. More importantly, build a workflow that works. Whether you're working in Lightroom or not, whether you're working in Capture One or some other raw processing program, figure out what your partner uses, make sure you're aligned with it, and build a workflow that works. Tip number 4, push for full service. What does that mean? What does full service mean? You shoot, they edit. So when you're done with the shoot, you're uploading your pictures. You can get those images uploaded to your client's gallery directly. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you're losing control. You're not now unable to see the images before your client does. You can go onto the online galleries, view the images to make sure everything looks right. Why not have somebody else prepare all of the post-production, and you're the director? You're managing the quality. That's literally what your job should be, to direct a team to get your images ready for your client. Tip number five, be open, be teachable, be flexible in the process. It's new. Whether you've outsourced before and you hated it, whether you outsourced before and you just accepted it, be flexible in the process. The process is in place from your editing partner. It's going to be rigid. It's going to be so process driven. It's going to be so frustrating that you might in your business not have Word documents or process documented out because you've just done it yourself. Whether you've tried to hire somebody in house and they just don't get it, don't you know how to edit? You went to art school, right? You should know how to edit pictures. There's always going to be a learning curve. There's always going to be uh, in house learning or training, right? On job training that always happens. So be flexible. Your partner's going to train you, and you're being flexible to the process to make sure we talked about it already on tip number two to communicate. But that's how you guys kind of get, no pun intended, married in this process, right? It's a union. You come together. It's a relationship. You want it to be successful. So let's stop talking and jump into tip number one. And don't expect perfection. All right. So tip number one is going to be don't expect perfection. Focus on meeting expectations, right? So there's no secret that I work for Evolve. We're an editing company owned by Salvatore Sincata, right? So I've been doing this for over 7 years, focusing on how to take the creative, somebody who's running a business, who's the main artist. They've been managing sales, they've been managing the accounting, they've been managing editing quality, camera equipment, technical support. They've been doing everything, right? And so there's all these like questions or concerns that all of us creatives have, and it's like, how can they edit for me? How is anybody going to know what picture I would pick? How would anybody know what good enough for me is? Make that decision. They weren't there on the shoot. They don't understand the process. And I'll be honest with you, none of that stuff matters. Understanding how to take a very subjective process and make it objective to where 50, up to 50 people, 25 people, five different editors would be able to replicate your same look within a range. That's the goal of outsourcing. That's it. That's what everyone's trying to do, no matter what nice way they communicate that to you, sell that to you, put a little ribbon in and a bow on it. It doesn't matter. The goal for success in outsourcing is making sure we're meeting expectations. So as your editing partner, we're explaining to you what to expect, and then we're delivering on those expectations. You, as the customer, are going, okay, I like that, or I need this, or I need that. You're communicating back. It's not a negotiation. It's not a terrorist negotiation saying, well, I need all this, and here's my price. All that's going to be laid out for you, all of those services. So let's talk about the toughest part about letting go of your editing, and it's going to be control. That's the biggest thing. I'm letting go of editing. I'm going to lose control of my edits. Absolutely not. I actually am advocating quite the opposite. Control is still yours. Keep that in check. But what you should be doing is you should be managing quality. You should be controlling your destiny, controlling what comes back to you. And that's all through the next tips that are coming down the line: communication, workflow, all that stuff comes after that. But looking at expectations, it's the same thing you do with your customers. Customer comes to you, they look at your website and go, you know what? Sally down the road from you does light and airy editing. And I saw on your website you're a little more classic photography, and that's not really my style. Do you do light and airy? Could you do that? Why are they coming to you, right? Do they like your pricing? Do they like your communication? Do they like your branding? Do they like you? All of these things you've already sold them on, but they look at your pictures and go, that's not really my style. What are you going to do in that moment? No problem. You know what? We do light and airy. We do it all, right? Brand integrity. You got to protect what you do, deliver on expectations you know you can. It's the same thing for an editing partner. No different. So you're not going to come to somebody and expect all things under the sun. Maybe there's options out there for that. Of course, we'll get into that. Custom, full service, those options are out there, but you just want to make sure everything you're seeing on the storefront, everything you're seeing on the website, all of those expectations are met, and be open to that process. So looking into that, you're going to have an onboarding process. When you're working with the team, they're going to learn your style, they're going to learn your editing. There's an onboarding process, but make sure you're focusing on expectations. They're promising you things. Are they meeting those expectations? What happens next, right? So stop spending time focusing on perfecting images. right? Your clients do not care about 5 points of magenta. They do not care about being dialed in on within 200 Kelvin in temperature. They don't care about being a quarter of a stop off in exposure. You go to different studios websites and you see their portfolio, and sometimes it looks like a greatest hits of like that week I liked that style, this week I liked that one. Forget about that, right? We're looking at consistency. We're looking at getting images within a range of being consistent, image to image to image, and keeping your style intact. So I promise you, when you sit in on a preview and two images are off 5 or 10 points of magenta, your client's not coming to you and being like, you know what, I think I would add a little more green to that. It's just not going to happen. If you're photographing for another photographer or another artist, of course you want to one up your game. Of course you're going to spend a little more time on those images. But you're not photographing artists all the time. You're not photographing people that edit all the time. Your customers won't tell a difference. So don't waste your time spending hours dialing in the perfect settings, because your editing team, they're not gonna meet that perfection, that level of expectation. They're gonna meet the level that they're gonna promise to, and you need to manage them to that. Let's jump into tip number 2: communication. All right, so here we are. Tip number 2: communicate, communicate, communicate. Communication is the key in any relationship, and relationships are important. Keep them. A good relationship is something you want to hold on to with your dear life. If your relationship isn't good, specifically with your partner, now we're talking about editing and photography, we're not talking about life partners and things like that. So don't want to go down that path. But good relationships are hard to come by. They're important. Keep the good ones. If your relationship isn't good with your current, you know, partner in this industry, find a new one. They're out there. All right. So you might be saying, you know what? I got it. Communication. I use email. I got a phone number. People have access to me. I've got it. I've got that in the bag. And that's focusing on the how, right? How are you having access to you? What are your hours? All these things, right? What I'm talking about is when you're communicating and what you're communicating to your partner, right? Because this is outsourcing. This is all remote. There's no going into the store, talking to someone at customer service and being like, "Look, I want to return this package. I want to return this product to Target," right? You're talking fully on remote. So you might be doing phone calls. You might be doing Zoom calls these days, which help. You might be doing screen sharing. But most importantly, email is going to be the most universal access to you and to your editing partner. It's email, they get back to you, there's SLAs, when are they responding, how are they responding, all those type of communications. So when it comes down to the when, you want to communicate things with immediacy, right? Alert your team as soon as issues arise. Reach out to them if you're having tech support. Figure out what those channels are. Do they have a tech team? Do they have a support team? Who am I reaching out to about sales? Who am I reaching out to about my account? You should have different reps, different areas. It might be the same person wearing multiple hats, as I do for Evolve, but you're going to want to figure out those same channels the same way your customers get a hold of you, right? If you just have info at your domain name, that might be how you let your clients communicate to you. Wets brings up a really good point. When you're using emails, don't be cheap in using free ones. Pay for an email that can be managed by a web hosting provider, or somebody that can make sure that your emails are getting to you and being managed properly, fishing out all of the spam, all of the security risk emails. So when you're using Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, Hotmail, AOL, whatever the free email providers are, you just want to be careful, making sure that you add in whatever company you're using. You want to add their domain name to your safe list. A lot of communication gets buried into the spam. All the important stuff goes to spam. All the crap you don't need gets to your main inbox. They have different layouts for emails to making sure your most recent messages are at the top. Settings for those things. They have focused emails, so they're showing up on your phone, but they're not showing up on gmail.com, and you're like, where are my emails? I didn't get that email, but you did. But it's just being mismanaged. Take the time, spend the money. Email is so important through communication, making sure you're adding your partner to your safe lists and those kind of things. I mean, that's the simplest part of, well, I didn't get an email from you, so I didn't hear from you, so I moved on. Also, call somebody, leave a voicemail. If you don't hear from someone, reach out to them directly. Um, I can't um, I can't, build an expectation to say, look, somebody's gonna be picking up the phone for you all the time. These days with tech support in general, you have to spend thousands of dollars a year in order to get maybe tech support somebody on the phone. So email is going to be, your main bread and butter for those things. Just manage your email well. But beyond that communication, just making sure that you're reaching out to your team. You're using an email address that's going to go directly to you. It might be an info, it might be a support ad that goes to multiple people, gets forwarded to multiple people on your team. That would be a good one for communication, all things above. You might have an invoicing team for accounting. You might have a sales team for future customers. You might have support team, somebody that's handling production orders, things like that. Make sure when you're setting up an email with your partner, it's production related. All of that communication is going to somebody that can take action or reach out to somebody that can get an answer for you. So let's move on to tip number 3, and one that's very important to this process, and it's building a solid workflow. All right, so tip number 3 is building a solid workflow, or more importantly, a workflow that works, right? So you want to figure out what your uh, editing company is going to be using to edit. So many of them are using Lightroom, and more specifically, catalogs with smart previews. Here's why. Many photographers are uploading their images with usually residential grade speeds. So that means 10 megabytes per second, 15 megabytes per second. You don't have the ability to send hundreds, maybe even thousands of raw files upload to your editing partner where it wouldn't take 2 days. Many of you probably say, well, I upload those anyways because I need full service. That's another tip. We'll get there in just a second. But the main bread and butter for what you need is Lightroom Classic. And here's why. When you import your images into Lightroom, you have the ability to build these things called smart previews. So typically, unless you've already outsourced before or worked with sharing catalogs and not necessarily wanting to share the raw files with somebody, but somebody's editing for you, you've likely already encountered smart previews. So these allow you to build these low resolution DNG files so somebody can do raw editing for you. So if you're shooting in raw, even shooting in JPEG, it doesn't matter. Let the smart previews build in Lightroom so you can send over your files at with full editing capability in Lightroom with just the smart previews. So that becomes a huge part of the workflow that many outsourcing companies are going to use. So you're going to build smart previews catalogs, you're going to upload them to them, and trust me, it's going to take 1/10 the time to upload a smart previews catalog versus uploading the raw files. So the big process with Lightroom, and that becomes a whole other conversation, is how to organize things on your computer, how to organize things in Lightroom. Using Lightroom, and more specifically with editing, many of you probably already have presets that you're using that you want to apply, which become vital for efficiency. So a lot of these presets, which can be applied in library mode to multiple images, it's a good place to have your edits at a good starting point. So when you're taking your images into Lightroom, you can already make those adjustments, make the tweaks so everything can be kind of dialed in. So presets here, you can apply them to multiple images at once. All the ones that we create here, simply apply them in grid mode at any time. So another part of building a solid workflow is going to be, how you have your images organized in Lightroom, right? You have your different editing partners are going to maybe be using collections. They use, different attributes, star ratings for culling images, color labels for different levels of editing. All that kind of stuff comes into play. You might use flags, your editing partner might not. So it's always a good thing when you're building a relationship with an outsourcing company is following their lead on how they're organizing files to send to you, because there's definitely been multiple ways they've done editing on their end, but there's a very important reason why they might use 5 stars for images they select, red labels for samples, green, blue, all these different colors for creatives. All of that stuff comes into play when they're applying their services and different editing services to your images. So definitely be open to that. But building a solid workflow, follow their lead. If you have your own workflow that you have, keep it on your end. Just make sure they're going to have requirements, things that they need. Just be able to adapt to that. So let's jump into tip number 4, which is going to be pushing for full service. All right. So tip number 4 is going to be push for full service. So what does that mean, right? There are many outsourcing companies out there that have products. They have services, right? They're selling you solutions. But for your photography business, you need something that's full service, top to bottom, right? The goal is you shoot, they edit. What if it doesn't stop there? What if it's they deliver the images to your client? What if it's they can upload back to your server? What if it's they can get dialed in on the workflow side of things where they're doing custom services just for you, services that aren't even on their website, right? And you're paying a premium for that. You're paying a monthly fee that you're able to simply forecast your costs, scale your business, and run the revenue, run the numbers correctly, right? So when you're thinking about outsourcing, it starts with color correction. All right, they got color correction dialed in. All right, color correction's simple, right? Anyone can do that. You're applying a preset, you're adjusting temperature, tint, exposure, highlights, shadows, and black point. Great. I need more, right? So what about culling? Well, nobody can select the pictures for me, right? Well, culling's simple, right? Is the image in focus? Check. Are the eyes open? Check. Well, it's a detail shot. There's no eyes. Well, is it in focus? Done, right? Um, is there a flattering expression? Yes. Okay. Are there 5 of the same images? Yes. Well, we're going to choose the best 1 or 2 that fit and move on, right? That's it. That's calling. Well, they're never going to know if that's a moment, the bride's laughing, she's crying, it's an emotional moment. Well, does it fit the first 3 or they're going to keep it? They understand if you shot a sequence of crying shots, they're going to keep those images. Now when the images come back to you, guess what you're doing? You might cull those down and say, you know what, there's a little too many duplicates in the reception. I'm going to remove some images, right? That's your job. Your job is to get the images down to that perfect number you want. Your job is to take some of those extras that the team would have no idea. They don't have any intuition. They have no, sixth sense to know what you're exactly looking for. So that's why it's your job to control the final call. You're talking 15, 20 minutes of perfecting the final selection. So when you're going through those images, you're not going and looking for better images. You're not looking for ones that are more in focus. You're not going and making sure they didn't miss a moment. That's their job. But you're going to look at those images before they go to your client and making sure, hey, I shot a wedding, didn't see any images at the altar of them kissing. Well, that's weird. Go through the job, right? Making sure those images are there. You can't deliver those at all. Going through there and saying, oh, we didn't get a picture of the mom coming down the aisle. Okay, well, go back to your editing team, right? Go back to the raws that were sent over. Looks like we didn't shoot that moment. Uh-oh, what do I do, right? So you're controlling all of those things. There's going to be all those questions you have in your head, but take the time, get onboarded, develop, build a relationship with your studio. So building a full service should be top to bottom. Culling, image selection, color correction, image straightening might be something, if you're a type of person that's like, I'm not going to deliver a crooked picture to my customer. Many people go, I go into the IPS all the time with crooked images. I don't care. I tell them, look, these images are adjusted. They're not ready to deliver. They're not ready to print. This is for a preview. You pick the images, then I'll perfect them, right? So that all becomes part of the pre-sales and post-sales strategy. So beyond that, you want to go into that with some creatives. So let's talk about pre-sales, right? What are you going into the IPS? What are you showing to them online to try and sell them on? What are they seeing? They have to see color corrected images. Those are the proofs, but they need to see some creatives. Pick these images out. What would this look like? You can't have a sales strategy that says, could you imagine what a 30-minute retouched art image would look like? You got to show them what that image looks like. Have your team pick it, pick the best image of the day. Because guess what? Whether your client buys that image or not, that's the image you're putting on your website. That's the image you're booking your next clients, right? So focus on the more important things. You shoot, order a package of services. Go full service. So you can go into that sales session fully prepared to sell some images. So you don't have to have the imagine what this would look like, or could you imagine the black and white image here, or could you imagine what a this is my favorite part of the day, and it's just color corrected images. The sky's boring, there's nothing removed from the background. You got to show them that high end edit during the IPS. I'm not here to teach you how to take images into IPS. Maybe that's for a future article, but you got to order those things. Think about that for a full service packages, right? So when it comes down to full service, think about this. You book a shoot on day one, you upload your images on day two, you get your fully edited selection of images back on day 8, day 9 from your team. You can already pre-schedule out the preview for day 10, day 11, day 12. At the time that you're booking the session, you can already promise when they're going to see those pictures. Think about that experience. Let that set in. Completely different experience when somebody's booking you and you're already talking about booking them to come see their pictures. Not, hey, I usually deliver pictures in about 4 to 6 weeks. What happens on week 3, week 4? They've already reached out to you. Hey, just checking in. I know you're busy. Where are my pictures? Why is that the experience that you're creating? Why not already forecast for them when to expect their pictures back? Why not build those expectations with your clients the same way your outsourcing partner is going to build expectations for you? It's simple. Think about it. Full service can get you there. That's where your head needs to be. Plain and simple. All right, let's move on to tip number 5. Be open, be teachable, be flexible. All right, so tip number 5 is be open, be teachable, be flexible, right? This goes into all aspects of life, not just editing. I mean, who isn't up for learning, right? Learning is the only way that we grow. So it's so important that now that you're developing a relationship with your partner, you're learning their processes. The processes are rigid, right? They will not be something that you're just going to pick up and just be dialed in right away. Let let some time sink in, be present in the process so that way you can focus on expectations and you can get to a place where the process that the team is editing or matching your style is repeatable and it's within a range of 90%. That's where you want to make sure your head is in the same place that theirs is when they're onboarding you, when they're building those expectations, right? So, if you want to put a post production system in place, you have to let go of that perfection, that 100%. Just be open to the process that this is giving you the ability to scale your business. This is giving you the ability to focus on the more important things in life. So why not focus on the success rate of that relationship? Of course, there are multiple outsourcing options out there, and a majority of them do the same thing. It's editing for you, it's remote, it's communication through email, it's SLAs, when to get your pictures back, what do you do when something's wrong? I mean, it's humans doing this work. There's going to be an error, but there's a requirement for the human element to make those things adjustable, that it can't just be automated. You can't just click auto and be done. There's not an algorithm yet that edits, that does color correction and culling and just does it all for you and just knows how you would do it. If it were out there, you could just purchase it and it would be done. This isn't a machine driven thing. It requires humans. But with humans, you have human errors. Humans are going to make mistakes, right? So you can't be blind to that, but just making sure that, we all make mistakes. We communicate, we hit a new wall, we move on, right? That's the most important thing. If it's the same issues happening over again, you keep repeating the same thing and expecting new results. That's the definition of insanity, right? So just make sure that you're remembering that I'm not advocating that you're losing control. I'm not advocating to let the quality go to crap. or to just say, you know what, a B minus is the new A plus. It's quite the opposite what I'm saying. What's important is to make sure that you are fulfilling the needs of your customer. You're focusing on your business, you're focusing on the money, and you're letting other trained professionals focus on what they do best. You need to manage them to a quality and manage them to the expectations that were set by them and agreed to by both of you, right? So you might be thinking, okay, I get it. Outsourcing, I have to do it, whatever, sure. I want to scale my business. I want to stop putting all the hard work into editing at night. I want to focus on having an editing system in place so I can grow my business. All right. Well, now it's time. So, what's holding you back from that? What's holding you back from keeping up with the growth that you've already gotten or scaling your business? I mean, look at what's going to happen next year. Next year, you might be shooting 1.5x the amount of work, but you're not necessarily raking in 1.5x in revenue. You might only be raking in the same amount of revenue that you normally get in a year, but now you're working 1.5 times harder. You need the help. You need a cost effective solution that isn't, well, you know what? I'll just hire somebody hourly. I'll just have them work for me when I need them, lay them off when I don't need them, and then hopefully that person will be there again when I'm busy again, and we'll just have this part time, no commitment, no sort of salary, no full confidence relationship. They'll just be there for me, right? That's not a system. That is a short term solution to you not wanting to edit. Build a system, build a relationship, build something that you can count on for your business. All right, so now that you're equipped with the top 5 tips on how to outsource successfully with an editing company, what's stopping you, right? Now that you have the confidence to still maintain control, you still can't expect perfection. You have to let go of perfection to let go of the editing. It's simple, right? So, tip number 1, can't expect perfection. Tip number 2, communicate, communicate, communicate. No relationship is successful without communication. Good, bad, indifferent, you got to communicate. Tip number 3, build a workflow that works. A lot of editing houses are going to be using Lightroom, smart previews. Find something that works and aligns with what you're doing. If you're not using Lightroom and you're like, I hate it, don't send Lightroom catalogs, send RAWs. You can get XMPs back. It's simple. Um, Tip number 4, push for full service. You shoot, they edit. Simple. Tip number 5, be open, be teachable, be flexible, right? That's for all aspects in life. Um, so when it comes down to what's stopping your business from thriving, from growing, it's outsourcing. It's simple. You need a system in place. You need some system to where somebody else is editing. Why? Because you need to stop focusing on working in the business. That's editing, working in the business. That's you're already shooting. Shooting is working in the business. That's I'm not advocating for that. But stop the editing. Focus on all your other time is working on the business. Focus on the money coming in. Then you won't be surprised why your end of year, your bottom line isn't as high as you wanted it to be. You're spending all these hours, spending 60, 70, 80 hours a week on your business, and you're not seeing the profit at the end of the year. That's just silly. Um, Build a system so that way you can let go. Um, but more importantly, from the takeaway from this is if you're focusing all of your time and energy on being the creative, being the production person in your house, you're gonna burn yourself out. There's no sustainable way to do this, to grow, to bring more money in, to do more shoots, and just continue to do everything yourself. It just doesn't work. I don't see it as a solution long term. You're either going to have to hire more photographers in house, which is fine. Now you're going to increase that need for editing. You're going to have overhead in your studio. And again, this isn't about whether you should hire somebody in house or outsource your work. I mean, you can run the numbers and see simply that it would be cheaper for you to outsource editing to a company to where it's not even about the cost of time or the cost of the service. It's about your time. It's about the overhead involved with you managing somebody, right? Somebody gets sick, doesn't show up to work. Who's editing your pictures now? When you have an outsourcing company, they're a business. You're a business. You have a different relationship when it's business to business than when it's business to employee. Completely different conversation. We'll save that for another time for sure. But again, I hope you enjoyed these top 5 tips. I hope this has given you a little sense of relief. Or if you've tried outsourcing before, you're like, you know what? I'm going to go into it again. I'm going to be open to that process. And hopefully, this will help build you a successful relationship because that's all we're trying to do here. In the photography industry, we want all of us to thrive. We want all of us to succeed. We want all of us to push to that next level. Outsourcing and building systems for your editing is how you get there. Thanks for tuning in.